Christian Batchelder, welcome to Mortgage Mondays.
Yeah, David, I don't know if you've heard the good news, but I'm pumped. Have you heard?
No, I'm not used to you being pumped like this. What'd you hear?
New settlement came out. Real estate's going to be free. There's going to be no purchase prices. Agent commissions are going away. Sellers have agreed to drop their prices an astronomical amount. We've won. This is it. Time to buy everything.
You're telling me that real estate's going to be affordable again?
That's what I'm hearing, man. This NAR settlement has come out. Agents are going away. We're not going to need them. And sellers are just going to say, hey, since I'm not paying them, let's just fire sell real estate. Super excited.
Oh, I know what happened here. I told you, man, you got to read the whole article. You got to quit going for that clickbait. It's not going to quite work out like you said. And in today's episode of Mortgage Monday, we're going to be breaking down what you can expect from the National Association of Realtors settlement when it comes to real estate, the MLS, and the rules of engagement between agents. All that and more on today's episode of Mortgage Monday.
But before we get into that, remember when you had to pay to get a lead's phone number? It was like the dark ages until DealMachine made skip tracing a thing of the past. Now, with your DealMachine plan, you get unlimited access to phone numbers and contact information for no extra cost. That's right. Get high quality, reliable information trusted by leading financial institutions, all fully compliant with the federal do not call list. Explore over 150 data points, including age, gender, marital status, occupation, and so much more. Trust me, this is the data you need for your off-market deals. With new filters, people flags, and color-coded phone numbers, lead management just got a whole lot easier. Ready to step up your investment game? Sign up for a DealMachine plan today and gain immediate access to this unlimited treasure trove of contact information and phone numbers. Just head over to DealMachine.com/BP. Transform your lead generation and deal-making strategies with DealMachine. Sign up today and start exploring the unlimited possibilities at DealMachine.com/BP, like BiggerPockets. Now, back to Mortgage Mondays.
Christian Batchelder, welcome to another episode of Mortgage Monday, where we give the people what they want. How are you today?
That's right. I'm doing good, David.
I'm glad to hear that. We are going to be talking about one of the groundbreaking, earth-shattering, huge developments in the space of real estate, the National Association of Realtors settlement with the plaintiffs that came after them, saying that real estate agents artificially conspired to keep commissions high, which in turn led to higher home prices. And the lawyers gathered together and said, we will put an end to this in order to make housing more affordable. I'm sure you're aware of the news yourself, right?
It's definitely an interesting finding, not only with the finding, but also how quickly it happened. I feel like, we were just talking about it a few months ago of it going into lawsuit, and the finding came out earlier this month. So definitely it's going to be a wild ride to see how this impacts really everything: mortgage, the real estate industry, real estate services. I mean, even bleeding through to like escrow, right? I mean, it's going to have a kind of an impact on everything.
It's going to have a massive impact on real estate transactions in general. So if you think about the way that real estate transactions are typically priced out, that you get a settlement sheet from the escrow company that has a list of all the different people that are getting paid in the transaction. You're going to have your title and escrow fees. The government takes their cut every single time this thing happens. Your agent commissions are on there. Your closing costs for the lender are on there. The reports sometimes get put on there. There's a lot of different closing costs that occur, and we're going to be moving around where some of those pieces go on the balance sheet.
I know in lending, we've discussed internally, kind of just to pull back the curtain a little bit, how our buyer's agents commission is going to be structured. It's not going to be, the predetermined agreed upon expense that the seller splits with them anymore. So, are we going to have to get seller credit to cover for them? I mean, I've talked to many of our lending partners that have considered financing the buyer's agent's commission, right? That may sound like, lenders just partnering with realtors. That's not necessarily the case, because if you think of it from a lender's perspective, if a buyer's agent is not involved, there's a lot of investors that would probably get by okay, right? They can run their own comps, they can do their own analysis, but like the first time home buyer that has no clue how to pull comps or what they're offering on, they're probably going to just offer whatever the listing agent says, right? The listing agent's going to say it takes $1 million to buy this thing. Okay, I guess that's what it takes. And they don't have the advice and guidance, which leads to them getting a bad loan, which leads to them not getting the advice and guidance around their finances. That could have a significant negative impact on the lender, right? Both in terms of how many of these deals are likely to close and ultimately how many of them end up defaulting for bad advising.
Let's talk a little bit about what this ruling was. So the gist of it is that lawyers got together, got a whole bunch of people that sold their house on the MLS and said, did you know that by selling on the MLS, you were forced to pay the commission of the agent that was negotiating against you? And the sellers clutched their pearls and said, oh, What? I was forced to pay the other agent commission? And they said, yes. As a matter of fact, the National Association of Realtors won't let you sell your house in the MLS if you do not offer compensation to the buyer's agents. What that means is you were having to pay the other side to negotiate against you. You would have got more money. And this is not right. The case went to court, and brokers and the National Association of Realtors actually settled before a judgment was reached. Now let's break down what was actually going on versus what we're all being told, because this has been lauded as a way to bring affordability back to the housing market. And if we're being honest, everybody's wanting to see that. I want to see that. You want to see that. I think everybody wants to see homes become more affordable and people be able to have a better life, spending less of their money on rent or on their mortgage. The problem is it's probably not going to do that. So this is the way that it used to work. If you wanted to sell your house, you were allowed to sell your house. If you chose to sell your house on the multiple listing service, you would get more money. Why would you get more money? Because that's where all the real estate agents who were representing buyers would bring their buyers to look at houses. This is what we call the market, like a marketplace where if you're going to be selling shoes, you want to go where everybody's going to buy their shoes. Now, if you were going to sell your house on the multiple listing service, NAR, the National Association of Realtors, actually required you to pay a buyer's agent something, even as little as a penny. And the idea here is you can't go put your house on the MLS, have a buyer see it, and then say to their buyer's agent, hey, thanks, but no thanks. I don't need you. I'm just going to go buy that house directly without you. It was a way that buyer's agents could feel comfortable bringing their clients to the MLS to look at all the houses that were for sale and not having to worry about being cut out of the entire process. It was actually a way that realtors were trying to protect each other, because if you don't do that, the buyer's agents aren't going to bring their clients to these houses. Theoretically, this is what the idea was. Well, the settlement found that that isn't something that should happen. I don't understand the logic of it, because no one ever forced sellers to actually put their house on the MLS. They were allowed to sell it on their own without putting in the MLS and not pay any agents if they didn't want to. So it's odd to me that the sellers were saying we should be allowed to sell our house where all the realtors are, the MLS, but we should also not have to pay them, and we should also not have to play by their rules. This is what the settlement found. Now, my first question is, who out there as a home seller is going to reduce the price of their home by 3% or 2.5% that now that they don't have to pay to a buyer's agent? I don't think that's going to happen. Comps are comps. People are going to sell their house for as much as they possibly can. No one's going to care that there's a buyer's agent who isn't getting the same commission that they used to get. I'm not naive enough to think this is going to bring home values down. What it's going to do is complicate the process. So what used to happen is a listing agent would go to a seller and say, here's the commission. I'm going to keep this half and the other side's going to keep that half. And both sides are going to get their half. And that way, more buyer's agents will bring their buyers to your house. We will get more offers. We will sell it faster and for more money. There's a reason it was done this way for a long time. It was better for sellers. Now what they're saying is that the listing agent can have that conversation if they choose. The seller can choose to pay the buyer's agent commission, but they're not allowed to advertise that on the MLS. So now a buyer's agent has to email, call, or text the listing agent every single time and have the uncomfortable conversation of what commission are you offering to me? And sellers are not required to pay it. Additionally, now buyer's agents can't just get a buyer and go show them home. So if you've ever been in a position where you found an agent and said, hey, I love this house, I want to go see it. Hey, I love this house. Can you call the listing agent and ask about it? Hey, I love this house. I think I want to buy it. You're not allowed to do that anymore. Now, before a buyer's agent can write an offer or show you a home, they have to have an agreement with you as their client saying that I am your agent and you are my client. Just like if you wanted to put a house on the MLS to sell it, you needed a listing agreement signed. Now you need a buyer broker agreement signed. This is going to be harder for the consumers that just wanted to go look at a house and write an offer than it used to be before. So instead of the listing agent having the difficult conversation with the seller about what the commissions are going to be, you have a listing agent having a difficult conversation about their commission. Then they can choose to talk about what the buyer's agents could be offered. And the buyer's agents have to have the difficult conversation with the client about their own commission. And that has to happen before anything can take place transactionally or even going to look at houses. You've got a lot more work that's now going to have to be done. And even though this was supposed to protect consumers, what it means is if you're a person who wants to go buy a house, you don't get to just use a smattering of agents. There's no more open relationships. There's no more dating multiple agents. Now you got to commit to one before you actually go on that date to see the house. So you're going to have to get to know that person better. Also, sellers may not be offering commissions to buyer's agents. And guess what that means? The buyers are going to have to pay it. So on top of the down payment, the closing costs, the origination fees, the title and escrow fees, the taxes, the home repairs, the pest inspection, the home inspection, the roof inspection, the pool inspection, and all of the rehab that you want to do on your house, you're also going to have to agree to pay your buyer's agent on top of all of this. Now, some some people will say, well, I won't pay my buyer's agent. I'll just go right to the listing agent. And that may seem like a cheaper option until you realize it's kind of like going through divorce court and paying for your spouse's attorney. It's not wise to go buy a house using the listing agent unless you are incredibly experienced buying real estate, because that listing agent works for the seller. That's who's feeding them. The dog's always going to be more loyal to the person that's feeding him. So these buyer's agents that think that they're going to avoid paying a buyer's agent commission are basically going to be walking into this transaction without representation, and they will have no idea if they're getting ripped off unless they're super experienced. So Christian, you and I will probably be okay because we buy houses all the time, but your average Joe who doesn't know what they're doing, how do they know that they could have got a $12,000 credit? How do they know that they could have got a $25,000 price reduction? How do they know that the seller could have made these repairs, or they could have got some money to buy down their rate? There's going to be no one telling them because they're not going to have their own agent, and that's not going to be the listing agent's concern. So I'm not a huge fan of the way that this shook out, but I am a fan of the changes that I think it's going to bring to the industry. I think this is probably going to eliminate a lot of the really bad agents that we had, as well as a lot of the really bad, let's call it dating etiquette that was going on in the real estate space. It used to be that you could get a realtor, not be committed to them, and just use them to write an offer, use them to see a house. And if you didn't like it, you could just fling them to the side and use somebody else. And it created a lot of dishonesty. Realtors weren't giving great service to these people that weren't committed to them. The people weren't committing to the realtors that they didn't think were all that skilled or that great. There wasn't much honesty going on. Hopefully this does bring a little more transparency, but with that comes commitment. Now you're going to have to pick your agent, not just go after a house and see the agent as a necessary evil that turns a key. Now, when you write an offer on a house, it might be a situation where you have to pay your agent 3% or 2% or whatever was negotiated unless the seller agrees to pay your agent. So when you write your offers, many times what you're going to find is that buyers are going to write offers to the sellers asking for their agent's commission to be paid as part of the closing cost. So after all of this drama, what we're likely to see is that instead of the commission being determined on a listing agreement by a listing agent, it's going to be determined at an offer by the buyer's agent, and the sellers are still going to have to pay this thing. So you and I have been talking about how we may be able to get some of our buyers that are buying houses cheaper rates and less money to be paid. So what are some of the ideas that you've had of how this might work itself out in the future where buyers are not going to have to pay cash out of their pocket for these commissions?
I've heard so many different takes on this, and one of the most popular takes is just that not much will change, right? If buyers just work their commission still into the escrow, which is possible, right? Hey, with this $500,000 offer for your house, you're going to pay a buyer's agent 2.5%, right? If they write the offers that way and there's a consistency, sure, not much will change, but it's not going to be pre-negotiate, right? That was the biggest thing that David said. It's not on the MLS, right? Previously, it was ruled being on the MLS meant you had to offer the buyer's commission. Even if it was $1, you had to offer something. And there was a standard that was set around 2 to 3%, right? How that will change lending is that sales is all very psychological, right? David, we've talked about in the past that hey, to get seller credits, sometimes you give them the sales price they want, but then work in the seller credits. And there's just something psychologically about seeing your desired offer price on your offer, right? That makes sellers more likely to go with you. Even if you're getting back 3% seller credit, like that means the seller's still netting less, but it's just that psychological impact of actually seeing their desired offer, on the paper, right? I think now there's going to be more of a attention drawn to, hey, here's your desired offer, but here's where we're going to subtract for real estate commission. And then here's what we're going to subtract for the buyer's closing cost. Once you start getting into itemizing these things, even though that was happening in the past anyways, it may cause sellers to just negotiate them out, right? I mean, and obviously then it's just an added expense on the buyer. And I think of it from the mortgage broker side, most buyers don't have an extra 3%. Like that's not in their budget. They're thinking, just like you said, David, of repairs, renovations, appliances, furnishing the place. They're not working in an extra 3% on all of their deals. I do think, like David said, there needs to be a higher kind of expectation on what realtors are expected to do. Unfortunately, I agree with David. There are a lot of bad agents, and hopefully this will be somewhat of a purge of getting, an agent like David's going to get the best offer, the best terms. He's going to come out of that deal with everything, whether he's the seller or the listing representation. representation.
Yeah, and they're not even going to know that they lost. That's the idea, right?
When you're really talking about representing somebody buying like the most expensive thing that most people in their lifetime buy, which is their house, you probably want a professional working internally in your team, David, and knowing what your team does. Like, there are good agents and they make a mountain of difference. And I could see lenders grouping together and saying, we want to make sure we protect the good agents who do make that difference. And we like the benefit that they give in terms of the advice and guidance, and fundamentals that they teach the buyer, which ultimately leads to better loans.
I'll be the first one to say that real estate agents have a terrible reputation that they deserve. We are bringing this to you today, partly because you may find that agent commissions become a part of closing costs, which means they become a lender expense, which is something we're talking about here on Mortgage Mondays. But we also want you to know that what this will do is complicate the system that was already pretty complicated. It makes it even more important that you have a really, really good agent. Everyone loves to scream, I don't want to pay commissions. And the example I always hear is, I called this realtor and I said I want the house and they wrote an offer. Why do they deserve $10,000 for that? And the answer is they don't. But Christian, in your whole career, how many times have you seen an agent that gets a phone call that writes an offer and it gets accepted and then it just closes?
It's the same thing with car insurance, right? Why does everybody pay for the guy who gets in an accident, right? All our rates go up. I wasn't in an accident. Well, you're paying for the 15 clients that guy had to show 15 offers to that ended up not buying a house, and he had to give financial guidance and advice to all those people and not make money.
That's the reality. It hardly ever happens that you just write an offer and you get a house. So let's sum this up. You need to pick an agent that's really good. No more dating around with agents. You're going to have to get committed to one. You're going to want to make sure that the one that you picked is the right one. Negotiations will get a lot trickier. You're going to have to ask for closing cost credits that you can use to buy down a rate, repair the property, improve the property, and get your agent paid when you make the offer. And sellers who choose not to pay a buyer's agent commission are very likely to find that they get way less people interested in their house. And the people who do pay the buyer's agent commission are going to get way more offers with an agent that can negotiate them way higher. And people are going to see, oh yeah, it makes way more sense to pay the buyer's agent even after this ruling. And as a side note, for all those sellers who went out there and sold their house for top dollar, getting all of the buyer's agents to bring their clients to the MLS and said we shouldn't have had to pay it, what I heard is the average seller got $18 after the lawyers got all their money. So all of this so that sellers could get $18, it would shake the whole industry up. There you have it, folks. A summary of what's going on with the National Association of Realtors settlement, how we think it's going to impact real estate, and our advice for what you should do to make changes in the way that you're purchasing real estate. Christian, any last pieces of advice you want to give?
The benefit of agents are definitely not going away. I mean, the strength of someone like a David, someone like a lot of the agents on the BiggerPockets Find a Realtor tool, they have their value, and it's going to stay regardless of who pays them, regardless of the outcome of this finding. This is very focused on the agents, but people are forgetting how this is going to affect everybody in the escrow settlement, right? And lenders are going to have to address this. Escrow officers are going to have to address this. How is this going to be defined as a closing cost? And I'm going to be tracking it closely and see what we can do to obviously help the agents that are adding a lot of value to the case.
Now, I also predict that in the future, we are going to hear about some people getting fleeced by using the listing agent, not having their own agent, or paying their agent and not being happy with the service. You're going to see a lot of stuff in the news that people are unhappy with bad agents, which I keep saying, quit complaining about real estate agents and start complaining about specific bad ones. But I don't think that's going to happen. And it's going to put a bad taste in people's mouth about buying houses at all. You're going to see more and more and more of the average public pull back and say, it's not worth it. I don't want to buy a house if that's what it's like out there. I'm just going to rent, which gives the BiggerPockets listeners an advantage, because if you're aware of what it takes to buy real estate, what the process is like, and how to protect yourself, you'll stay in the pool when some of your competition goes away. So we highly encourage you to keep listening to episodes of Mortgage Monday. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel and hit that bell, as well as the BiggerPockets podcast. Read the blog articles and read the books, because the more knowledge that you gain now, the more advantage you have over the people that aren't putting in the work like you are, but yet have been historically your competition. Christian, if people want to reach out and they want to find out more about you, what you can do to help them in their journey, where can they go?
Best ways to find me: find access to our loan products, find access to a good loan officer. You can reach out to me directly at The One Broker. Instagram's the best place to DM me. And our website's theonebrokerage.com. There's a little contact us tab in the top right.
There you go. You can find me at davidgreene24.com or on your favorite social media at David Greene. Take a minute, just send me a DM right now, whatever your favorite social media is, and let us know what you thought about our breakdown. And as always, let us know in the comments. Are you a realtor who's worried? Are you a non-realtor who didn't know this before? Do you have a prediction of how you think things are going to shake out? And most importantly, what skills do you think we should start working on now to prepare for this new normal? Let us know in the comments. And if you've got a minute, check out another episode of Mortgage Monday. If not, we will see you next week.